Hello and welcome. We begin with Libya in the north of Africa, where rival governments in the east and west are embroiled in a fresh row. Libya's Benghazi-based government in the east, headed by military strongman Khalifa Haftar, has said it is shutting down oil fields and terminals that it controls and suspending production. The announcement has further heightened tensions with the UN-recognized government in Tripoli, which is headed by Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dbeibah. Now, Dbeibah government says that oil fields should not be allowed to be shut down under flimsy pretexts.
The Libyan government declares a state of force majeure on all oil fields, halting oil production and exports until further notice, and calls on all competent authorities affiliated with the Libyan government, each according to his position and responsibilities, to put this matter into effect urgently.
Khalifa Haftar's administration says the move is linked to repeated attack on leaders and employees of the Central Bank based in Tripoli, which manages Libya's large oil resources and the state budget. It added that outlaw groups were responsible for a bid to control Libya's key financial institution.
Libyan government statement for the year 2024 regarding the repeated attacks on the Central Bank of Libya. The Libyan government is following with great interest the repeated attacks on the leaders, employees, and administrations of the Central Bank of Libya by an outlaw group, incited and assisted by the impersonator Presidential Council, targeting illegal control over the most important financial institution in the country, which is the Central Bank of Libya.
Though the Eastern-based administration controls around 90% of the country's oil fields and terminals, the oil revenues as well as the state budget are managed by the Central Bank based in the capital Tripoli. Now, the latest peak in tensions was triggered by a series of events in recent days. On the 18th of August, the Libyan Central Bank suspended all its operations after its head of information technology was abducted. The official was released a day later, and the central bank resumed its operations. A week before that, local media reported that armed men had besieged the bank to force the resignation of its governor, Sadiq al-Kabir. Now, videos showed a group of people breaking into the bank's headquarters, and he has been criticized by the Dbeibah over management of oil reserves and resources. Now, the Tripoli-based government also appointed a new governor, but this was rejected by the central bank. Libya's oil revenues have stoked tensions for years in the country that has been witnessing instability since a 2011 NATO-backed uprising that overthrew the long-time ruler Muammar Gaddafi. Now, Libya split in 2014 with eastern and western factions that eventually drew in Russian and Turkish backing. The central bank has long maintained independence from rival governments. It is the only globally recognized depository for Libyan oil revenues, which is a vital source of income for the war-torn country. Crude oil prices rallied at 3% on Tuesday amid heightened geopolitical risks in West Asia, North Africa, including over the Benghazi administration's decision. And the fighting between Libya's two rival governments has been on for days and is only escalating. There is threatening a UN-brokered deal in the North African nation. Now, for more on this, we have with us Musa Mdunge, an international affairs expert who is joining us live from Dundee in the UK. Thank you for being with us, Musa.
Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon to you and to your viewers.
Now, the Benghazi administration has cited force majeure and suspended oil production and exports. How is the closure of the oil fields by the Eastern government likely to impact Libya's economy and its relations with international stakeholders?
Well, certainly, the recent shutdown of the oil fields will certainly have an impact on Libya's economy. You could imagine that we're talking about a country whose economy is largely dependent on oil exports. On a day-to-day for the past year, Libya has managed to pump out about 1.2 million barrels per day, of which 1 million is for exports. So for a country such as that, whose budget depends on oil revenues, this is a major risk. And the very fact that both sides seem to be moving further away from each other rather than closer is very problematic and may signal further disturbances in the oil market, perhaps further increases in the oil price. We've already seen how this particular shutdown has already benefited the United States, where particularly German customers are turning to US shale oil in order to augment the loss from this particular supply. So in terms of global supply lines, this will really mark huge shifts depending on how quickly a resolution to this particular crisis is found, and whether both sides can in the end find each other as it pertains to the management and the running of the Central Bank of Libya.
And what are the potential consequences of the ongoing disputes for the UN-brokered peace deal in Libya?
Well, certainly, a lot of work has gone into that particular peace deal. We know that it has been in place since 2020, however, not perfect at all. That particular deal was supposed to move Libya towards potential elections, new democratic government, a return to civilian rule and governance. Unfortunately, this particular crisis, stands, really is a bar to that particular endeavor by both sides to get to that point of elections. These elections, which were expected to be run around next year in February. But unfortunately, given where we are in terms of this particular conflict, and the very fact that, which is quite peculiar to me, the very fact that the management of Libya's budget would be placed under the hands of the central bank has perhaps created a problem in and within itself. That where I think the goal in terms of doing it that way had a lot to do with shifting the control of the budget away from the warring sides. However, all it has done is create a new concentration of power and a new concentration in a place where conflict will now reside, which is what this particular crisis is showing us. Now, the question is going to be, those who have brokered the peace deal, what will they do now in terms of changing where the power of the purse resides? Because until we see a resolution on that, It is likely that conflict will continue.
Right, and Musa, on that, how might the international community, including the United Nations, effectively intervene now to stabilize the situation and to support Libya's path to recovery?
Well, look, we've already heard from the United Nations mission in Libya. They've taken out a statement calling against any unilateral decisions as it pertains to the Central Bank of Libya. They've called on meetings between the warring parties. So what is likely to happen in the following days is we're likely to see an intervention from that UN level, trying to bring all the parties together in order to find a resolution to this particular crisis, because already so much of the global economy is really sitting on sensitive ground when you think of all the other geopolitical and geoeconomical challenges the world is facing. For example, the Hamas-Israel conflict happening in the Middle East. This particular conflict around the Central Bank of Libya will add just another hot note on top of those challenges, which global leaders are going to have to come together and find a resolution towards.
Right. Musa, thank you very much for being with us on First Post Africa. Great to speak to you, as always.
Thank you so much for having me.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for a future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
cross to the West Indies. What can we expect from this?
Hello, I'm Alyson coming to you from Durban, South Africa. Today we have a special show.
We'll start with a report on India's shifting nuclear posture. For the first time since India officially became a nuclear power.
Hello and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Aaron Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital,